Going live. We're going live. Hello, hola, everybody, and welcome to the Omega Revolution. And tonight we are super excited to be having Dr. Mick Jordan joining us. Dr. Mick Jordan is one of Australia's most experienced sports remedial massage therapists and naturopathic doctors. Mick is also part of the Australian Paralympic medical team, and he has been for numerous years. And so we are very, very fortunate to be able to have Dr. Jordan join us tonight. And we're excited to be able to ask him some questions that we've had building up over the last few months. And we're so grateful that we have Gail and Rebecca joining us here on the actual Zoom, as well as everybody out in Facebook world. And I'm going to be keeping track of any questions that are coming in from Facebook as well. But what's really unique, and what I've come to learn, and as we formulated the Omega Revolution, and we're starting to move forward with with our health and wellness, and it's becoming so clear to me that not only are we test-based nutrition with Zinzino, but we're also all bio individuals. And we're all unique, and what works for one person isn't going to work for another person. But having a baseline and knowing where to start is pretty much the basis and the fundamentals of absolutely everything that we would do moving forward. Because without knowing what's going on internally, we're just guessing. Isn't that true, Dr. Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not till we often experience a health concern that we actually do something about it. So maybe we feel unwell, or we've come down with a particular condition or something a little bit more, sinister, I guess, that's when we go to the doctor, get some bloods done, see what's going on. Whereas this is very much a preventative approach. We want to address things right now, today, so they don't become issues down the track.
Okay, so my burning question, I've got many of them, so I'm going to start small. What are the benefits of omega-3? Okay, so we know that omega-3s are an essential fatty acid. So we hear that term all the time, essential fatty acid. But you know what? It really doesn't resonate until it's actually explained, because I hear that term all the time, but until I actually understood that my body doesn't produce it, that I have to get that from that external source, it didn't click. So tell me what the benefits of the omega-3s are and why it's so crucial that I need them.
Sure, that's a really good question. So anything with the word essential in front of it predominantly means that we can't manufacture them, like you said. So we have things like amino acids, which are essential and non-essential. So we either produce them or we don't within the body. So in other words, we have to actually get them externally through our diet. We'll probably talk about this going further on, is about the testing that we've been doing and actually looking at how high the percentage of essential fatty acid deficiency is in the body. So what does that mean? So if we break down some of these essential fatty acids into two components, and the major components of them are EPA and DHA. So EPA is found in every one of your 80 trillion cells. It's found within the cell membrane. So if we break the body down, we look at our body as one functioning sort of organism. And if we break it down into systems like cardiovascular, urinary, reproductive, nervous system, if we break those systems down even further, they're made up of organs and tissues and things like that. So digestive systems made up of gut and liver, those types of organs. So let's even drill down further and see what are those organs made up of, or what are those tissues made up of. And they're made up of cells. And they're the most fundamental building block of our body. We cannot get anything more than that as fundamental as those cells. So what we're trying to do is make sure our cells are healthy. And because if our cells are healthy, we're going to get healthy tissue, healthy organs, systems are going to function more effectively, and your body's going to function more effectively. So if we drill down into those cells, each one of your cells, whether it's a brain cell, kidney cell, muscle cell, all have a cell membrane, and that's where the EPA, that essential fatty acid, resides in. Now, your cells, and that might be great because you might think, well, my cells are full of EPA, but your cells have a huge turnover rate. In other words, your cells only live for a certain amount of time, and then we create a new cell when that cell dies off. So that means we've constantly got to be putting that EPA into that cell membrane. So in other words, we have to constantly get an adequate source of essential fatty acids in the form of EPA into our body through our diet to basically replenish and create healthy new cells going forward. So what if we don't? Well, we now produce a cell that is slightly dysfunctional to the previous version. Okay, and that's, if we keep doing that with different tissues and organs and in our body, then that's where I believe disease starts. So the opposite happens. If we can actually produce a healthier cell every time we produce a new cell, because we've got adequate EPA in our body coming in externally, then we create a healthier version of that cell. That's where healing creates or starts. It can only be two ways a cell can go, right? It's dependent on its environment. So EPA is used to create healthier cell membranes, which in fact creates healthier cells. The other component is DHA, which is more concentrated on your nervous system. So brain tissue, nerve function, those types of things. So we use it extensively with people with mental health conditions, cognitive decline like dementias, Alzheimer's, those sorts of things as well. But for ensuring proper brain function, we need lots of DHA within that brain tissue and nervous system as well. And if you think about the brain as an organ, it controls the whole body. It's the basic control center of the body. So we need to get the control center working more effectively, and the way we do that is with adequate DHA. So, deficiencies, as I said, in cells with the EPA, you would find that you weren't producing healthier cells. It could lead down the track to degeneration of cells and tissue and organs and your health. Depletion in DHA in the brain can result in things like, as I said, mental health type conditions, poor focus, poor memory, cognitive decline, those sorts of things.
Okay, so that was a lot there. And
that was my short answer.
That was your short answer. Well, it was fabulous, and
Yes.
like that explains a lot to me. And I know for those that are just maybe catching into this for the first time, learning all these slangs, EPA, DHA, all of this might just be a little overwhelming. But part of that you touched on, and I just want to touch base on again, is the omega-3 supplements. Yes, they can help improve our mental health, and that is through the DHA, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the DHA is good for our brain, our skin, our nails, our hair. What else is the DHA good for?
Yeah, so it's more EPA for hair, skin, nails, those types of things. So anything where there's cell replication, that's where the EPA is concerned. So brain really, if we look at some of the mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, if we look at other things like people that might be on the have autism or on the Asperger's spectrum, essential fatty acids are super, super important for their nervous system, their development, and just normal brain function and nervous system function. So think about EPA works on all your 80 trillion cells, and DHA is working predominantly on brain tissue and nervous system tissue.
So here's my trick question for you for the night. How do you know if you're taking the right dosage of EPA and DHA, like especially like maybe even for brain fog? But I'm just adding the brain fog in there to just kind of trick you a little bit because, go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is the interesting thing, is because we don't know if as I sort of mentioned before, we often don't know we've got a deficiency until it shows up as a health problem down the track. So we were able to measure people's DHA and EPA levels in their body and give them a correct dose of essential fatty acids to correct that imbalance. So really the only way we know is if we test people.
So if I'm 100 pounds or if I'm 250 pounds, my dose, I take 2 capsules daily for optimum health.
That's not going to work. It's going to be of some benefit because you're taking some form of essential fatty acids.
Right.
So there's 2 components here. There's bioavailability of what you're actually taking. So how easily does your body break down and actually absorb what you're actually taking? Now, that could be food as well, right? It could be anything that you're taking, medication, supplements, nutrition, all have to be broken down and absorbed. So the bioavailability of something is really important. So how much of the actual product is your body absorbing? Because most supplements out there, people aren't absorbing the optimal levels of it as well. So, we want to also look at, saying 2 capsules a day is a very blanket approach to those sorts of supplementation, because if I'm a bigger body, I'm going to need more essential fatty acids. So, or if people have got higher requirements, like let's say elite athletes, then they're going to require more of that essential fatty acid. So we can do 2 things. We can base it on your body weight to get quite a clear dosage of what you actually need. But we also can do the testing regularly, whether it's every 6 months, to see whether people are needing more or less or whatever that dosage. And we can tell by their essential fatty acid profile how much they need, how well it's being absorbed as well. And when you so I've actually looked at a lot of these tests, so over 1,000 over the last 3 years. And even people taking commercial fish oils or essential fatty acids are still showing up anywhere from 4 to 5 times as depleted as what they need to be. So they're not just simply not absorbing that product. So that product is not as bioavailability. It doesn't have that bioavailability that we actually require.
Okay, so while we're on this path here, the bioavailability, that's huge, because even for myself, and I know many others out there, we take the omega-3 supplement. We didn't know why we were taking it, but we were told it's an essential fatty acid, we need to take it. So we took what it said on the bottle, we took it. So, we didn't know, like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I didn't know that I could actually test my omegas. I didn't know that I wasn't doing the right thing by taking those 2 capsules daily for optimum health. So when I took this test and I found out that I had over 5 times the inflammation in my body, I was like, oh my goodness, like what was I doing by taking these supplements? I was literally not helping my body. Like, you're right, what you alluded to earlier, like maybe I would have developed worse symptoms of something in my deficiencies, but at least I was getting a little bit, but not what the amounts that I required. So a question here, the bioavailability, that's huge, because that is how we know that our cells are taking in those nutrients. So what makes the Zenzino Balance Oil the elite oil around the world?
Yep, good question. I'm going back a step, to physiology, and is that the only reason we eat or drink is to feed and water all of your 80 trillion cells. And so we want to be able to put those nutrients into it. So someone might have an absolutely pristine diet and drink lots of filtered water. And that's great because they're putting really good fuel into their body, but what is their body doing with that fuel? So the bioavailability is dependent on quite a few things. You touched on inflammation there as well. So if someone's got gut inflammation, and they're not breaking down food and they're not absorbing it through that gut villi, then they're not going to be getting the most out of their nutrition. What we're seeing at the bioavailability with the Balance Oil is it's not just essential fatty acids. So yes, it's got vitamin D in it, but it has really powerful antioxidants called polyphenols, and that actually does 2 things. One is it increases the absorption of the essential fatty acid across that gut membrane, but it also starts to address any inflammation within the body at that cellular level. So if there's gut inflammation, you can help down-regulate that and be absorbed a lot more effectively across that gut membrane. So the polyphenols are the real key to it as well. And obviously we want to look at the dosage, as we mentioned before. The dosage is really important to to ensure we're getting enough of those essential fatty acids.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's so essential. And, you know, having this bioavailability, like it was never explained to me before. And this is so valuable of information that we need to share. Gail, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Just hearing what you've said, Dr. Mick, I'm curious, what would the early signs of deficiency be, and then long-term effects as well?
Yeah, so it could be, if we look at one of the basic mechanisms that essential fatty acids work on, it's within, as I said, that cell membrane, but it's also that they have a very strong anti-inflammatory effect as well. So again, you can link pretty much most diseases to a dysfunction at a cellular level. And if there's inflammation that's prevalent, then you're going to basically, I mean, I could pretty much list nearly every health concern is related back to that cellular dysfunction, cellular inflammation as well. So I can't pick out certain diseases or health conditions and go, okay, if you don't have this EPA, this is going to lead to this. It could lead to anything. And that encompasses a whole lot of things, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's digestive, whether it's nervous system related as well. So deficiency will lead to a lot of types of health concerns. And that's where we see when people are taking these essential fatty acids, they might be taking it for improving their insulin sensitivity in type 2 diabetes, but they also notice that their sleep improves, or their skin clears up, or they have better bowel function. And they're like bonuses. You know, someone's obviously health concern is one thing, and often they're focused on that. But we can see with all these other areas that improve in the body once we take the proper dosage and the type of essential fatty acid, we can see how different areas of the body are also improving and repairing themselves as well.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just wondering on that topic of like people absorbing oils or whatever, and depending on their age, would you say a younger person may respond more quickly given if they had the same diet as somebody that was, say, a senior, if they were taking the balanced oil? Or like
No, I mean, again, it would depend on what condition they're, you know, again, gut function would determine a little bit about that absorption level. So maybe someone who's elderly may have poor nutrition, might have decreased gut function and things like that. So, but we can also see that in kids. You know, we can see the poor gut function through early use of antibiotics or overuse of antibiotics as well. So there's no real, I think people absorb it at whatever level they're at and improve individually in a whole different lot of areas as well. So, you know, we often think about people that are old or more inflamed, and, you know, like we think about arthritis and all those sorts of things. But from the testing we've done, and I've sort of shown that the worst 7 blood tests I've read in the world are kids under the age of 15. So, you know, we want to address that really early. Like, again, this is very preventative by being able to test, correct it, and then retest to show that the product's actually doing what it says it does is super important at the earliest intervention with this particular product, because we know kids are absolutely behind the 8 ball now as far as their health.
Yeah, in my family, I just did a test on an 18-year-old, and he actually came back today with a 40-to-1
Wow.
bounce. Yeah, and he's so athletic, and he tries really hard. Like I just can't stress enough to him how much he needs the product. So yeah, thank you.
And often that's the thing, because, you know, in our late teens and early 20s, we're pretty much invincible, right? We go out and people just hammer their bodies and then they, you know, recover pretty well the next day. Well, as we move into our 30s and 40s, and some of us 50s, that changes, right? The recovery, repair of the body is a lot slower.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to show someone who's young, who thinks, you know, they're invincible, if we can show them some pathology tests, and as you said, with that test, show them what's going on at that inflammatory level, that's a really important one. So instead of 3-to-1, they're 40-to-1. So they've got some empirical data now to actually convince them that, hey, you know what, whatever you're doing to your body right now, whether it's nutrition, whether it's lifestyle, is not going to lead to long-term health, vitality, longevity. So, you know, let's supplement with it. Let's retest it in 4 months and show you the difference in how your body's responding to this particular essential fatty acid formula.
Yeah, it's good advice. Thank you.
So, seeing as we're talking about food right now, can we get enough omega-3s from the food we eat? Like, I have this pristine diet. I eat fish 3-4 times a week. I don't need a supplement. What do you tell me?
Yeah, we're not getting, well, we can prove it. Like, we can prove that. So number one, I'll say no. We are not getting anywhere near the amount or quality.
But what about all that flax? What about all that flax seed that I eat?
So all that flax seed is only getting converted at 15% into the human body. The rest you burn as energy. So again, so let's say someone who moves to a vegetarian or vegan diet is often told to supplement with huge amounts of flaxseed oil. And we only convert it, as I said, at 15%. Even the testing we've done, particularly with vegans, are extremely low. Like, some of the lowest we've seen are with vegans and vegetarians, because obviously they've either started off with a plant-based diet or moved to it for whatever reason, but they're missing out on a key area of these anti-inflammatory essential fatty acids as well. So, you know, we can show that the testing that we're not getting enough. Like, 97% of people we test are severely, like, not just a little bit, but they're severely deficient in EPA, DHA, vitamin D. You know, as Gail mentioned, inflammation is a real massive marker that we can measure with that blood test as well.
For sure. Wow. Yeah, that's so true. And, you know, and even there, it's the flaxseed is an ALA, which is an omega-3, but it's not one of the marine based. So speaking about the marine based,
can I just say, I'll just add one more thing on just on that. Like, you might say, oh, okay, I'm going to eat salmon, or I'm going to eat fish, you know, 4 or 5 times a week. Well, what's the quality of the fish that you're eating, and where's it sourced from? And that's really important, because if you're eating large fish like salmon, then you're putting in a lot of, you know, contaminants that, particularly if it's farm bred, into your body that you don't really need to be putting in there. You can actually replace a lot of that with a pure source of essential fatty acids with the balance oil.
Right. So in answer to that question, I would say most people would get it from Safeway or Costco. But so here's another question. So Zenzino actually does have an algae based balance oil. And so my question there is, algae based DHA better than the fish based DHA? And are there any dangers associated with consuming algae based DHA?
No, it's a really good form of DHA as well. And obviously for people who are vegan, vegetarian, they want a plant-based version of omega-3s. That's why a lot of them, as you mentioned, tend to consume lots of flaxseed. So if you think about the algae as a precursor, so, you know, the fish eat the algae and they convert that into essential fatty acids. So we're actually sort of going back a step and looking at the source of those essential fatty acids with marine algae and consuming those more effectively as well. And, you know, it's just an equal source. It's just where people are at with their diet. Do they want to consume, you know, fish or product of a fish, or do they want to consume something that's more plant-based? But I don't know of any issues with like too much of the marine algae, because we can test. We can regulate through the testing. So we know exactly what people are consuming and how much they are, and if they need to increase it or decrease it.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I had, and this is a part of that, because we do have different oils through Zenzino in the balance oils for the different types of fish oils out there that we have. And I recently did a trade show in Vancouver, and I had a lady, she came the first day, and I gave her a balanced shot with the oil and water, and gave her the shot, And she came back the next morning and she told me that it really upset her tummy. And so she was concerned about that. And she said, you know, I'm not interested. I had finger pricked her, and, you know, obviously we're going to send that blood test over to Norway, which has been done. So we're expecting that back within the next few weeks. So I had the opportunity to actually give her the Aqua X, the one that dissolves in water, some type of, you have the professional term that it's called, Mick.
Yeah, it's just more, it's an aqueous formula, so it's just more water soluble. So if people want to mix it in with, sometimes I use it with kids.
Aquacel.
Yeah, so it's more, if you want to also use it with, you know, smoothies and things like that, it just dissolves a little bit better in an aqueous solution in water or something like that, rather than the oil base.
So I gave her a shot of that. I opened up a brand new bottle. I gave her a shot of that. And she came back to me within 20 minutes. And this is a lady that's very in tune with her body. And she actually told me she could feel it moving through her body. And she says, do you have a special on this? I said, no, we don't. And she says, well, I want 4 bottles of it. She never even asked the price. She just knew,
she felt the
you know
difference.
what? She felt the difference. And so you know this as well, like with kinesiology and the muscle testings that people can do, they can tell whether or not their body is going to reject something. So what would you say to somebody, you know, obviously I found a solution for her with the other product, but for maybe somebody that is tried the balance oil and they had an upset tummy, what would be your recommendation to them? And I know that's a generic recommendation.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It also could be that she didn't have food in the stomach as well. Like it could have been that she, I don't know, didn't have breakfast or something. I'm not sure, but often we always recommend taking it with food because it just helps your body break it down more effectively. And obviously the aqua version of it is a little bit more water soluble, a little bit easier to break down. So obviously she also might have had a bit of gut inflammation, something else that might have been going on that just impaired the absorption of the more the oil-based one, the normal regular balance oil. But yeah, look, it's not unusual for people to notice a difference quite quickly after consumption of the balance oil. And again, that's a little bit about the bioavailability that we mentioned before, and how effective your body actually absorbs it as well.
So how do we test this? This is just a random one. How do we test the gut? How do we test the gut health?
That's a big one.
I know, right?
That's like that's another talk.
I know, but what's the quick answer?
Well, it's dependent on a whole lot of things. So it's also dependent on like history of antibiotic use and abuse. So it's about what I call the ecology of the gut. So what's the balance between good and bad bacteria in the gut? So when I say good bacteria, one that's symbiotic with the human body, not like yeasts and a whole lot of other bacteria and parasites that also could be living in your gut. So there's a balance in that ecology. Like any ecology, if we shift it, things go out of whack. So maintaining good gut flora is number one. And most people I see in clinic have really poor gut flora, even if they're taking probiotics and things like that as well. The other thing, it could be that inflammatory type condition. So whether it's irritable bowel or inflammatory bowel disease, or it might be colitis or things like that, then that inflamed tissue has poor absorption across that gut lining. And that could obviously infect it as well. Stress can affect your gut. Medication can affect your gut. You know, taking paracetamol, which is a very common painkiller, will destroy good bacteria in your gut. It won't do it at the same rate as an antibiotic will, but people living on pain medication will actually start depleting that good flora within that gut. So you're just creating a whole new problem in one of the most important organs or part of your digestive system, which is your gut as well. So, you know, alcohol consumption, diet will definitely affect the gut. And that in turn affects the brain because of the vagus nerve and the enteric nervous system that connects back to your brain. And that is where we see a whole lot of other dysfunction happen when there's imbalance in the gut. So testing it might be something like a microbiome test, where we'll stool sample test, where we can look at the variety of bacteria in the gut, and we can look at how much of that bacteria it's got. So it's not so much about, hey, I have this strain, this lactobacillus strain, and I've got, 25 billion of them. It's about the diversity of the bacteria, and there's that's one area. Or if they've got other bugs there, GPs can do other stool sample analysis to look at, okay, what's running the show down there as well. So we can do subjective tests and we can do objective testing to look at people's gut function.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question just in relation to what you mentioned about people with gut issues? So there's poor absorption across the gut lining. So with people like that, then do you suggest that they still continue because, their body is healing and that's the goal? And if they stop, obviously it's not going to heal. But what, would you say maybe take a little less to get them through, or do you have any advice in that respect?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would, let's say there is an inflammatory thing there. We want to actually put in, if it's not irritating something, then we actually want to put in a little bit more of the balance oil because of its anti-inflammatory effect. So we're actually going to get a quicker healing through the balance oil on its own. But also the other product, the xenobiotic, which is the prebiotic fibers, the 4 prebiotic fibers, again, is really helping with gut function as well. So I always say, what balance oil is for your cells and your brain, the xenobiotic is for your gut.
And the xenobiotic has the fiber blend in it. So with somebody with, for instance, IBS, do you believe that that extra fiber would still be helpful, or could it possibly irritate because of the fiber?
It's more the gross type fibers that will irritate people with, let's say, irritable bowel and things like that as well. So some of the undigestible fibers that we might get through our diet, they can sometimes irritate an already inflamed gut as well. So I guess the prebiotic and a probiotic work quite synergistically together to restore some of that gut function as well.
Awesome, thank you. So are there any dangers associated with consuming omega-3?
I haven't seen any, haven't come across any, because that's more because of the deficiency that we see in the testing as well. And we're not going to, they always say too much of a good thing we want to look at, as an individual, we want to look at your deficiency, because we're all different. And if we read everyone's blood tests, they're all going to be different. Just like if you went to a GP, your blood tests are all going to be different with different numbers. And we want to address those numbers and correct them. But we're not going to tell people to take twice the dose or 3 times the dose, because we know the bioavailability of the balance oil is really, really effective on rebalancing the body in those 11 fatty acids. So there's no need to overdose on essential fatty acids when you're getting the right type of essential fatty acid.
Okay, perfect. And I struggle sometimes because, you're talking to people and you're sharing with them the valuable information that you're learning. And, oh no, I eat enough, I get enough in my diet, all these things. But, there's so many important facts, as of 2012, which, that's like 10 years ago already. About half of all adults, 117 million people, had 1 or more chronic health conditions. 1 out of 4 adults had 2 or more chronic health conditions. 7 of the top 10 causes of death in 2010 were those chronic diseases. And most of them were heart disease and cancer. Obesity, it's a huge, it's it's probably going to be worse than this pandemic that we've gone through. And that, you know, the diabetes is just insane, and what they're doing to our foods. And by not realizing that we need to take this essential supplement, like, how do we reach people, Mick? How do we tell them how important this is, and that the foods, like, unless we're eating, and I really do, I hate to food shame people, but I'm even food shaming myself recently with my own food choices, and I eat pretty healthy. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, holy crap, there's so much things that I can tighten up in my own personal diet and to make my longevity longer. So how do we do this? What's our path forward?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And again, I'll give them a short answer. Is that we're not eating nutritious food to the same extent as possibly we were before. So our food is more abundant, but it's less nutritious. And what I'm seeing clinically is deficiency syndrome. So there's this abundance of food, but it's not nutrient dense. And you know, as you said, we've mucked around with it. There's preservatives, additives, coloring, flavorings, those sorts of things. You know, great marketing. Just walk down the aisle of any supermarket, you'll see who pays for the best eye level shelf that, you know, you can just reach there, or kids can reach as well. So we've got to look at what the fuel we're putting in our body is, and that's obviously changed over the years. But we've got to look at where those deficiencies are, right? So again, with the testing that we're doing, we're able to detect through it's like a food-based test. So we're actually looking at deficiencies that you're getting in through your diet, and we do bombard ourselves with a lot of unnecessary chemicals and additives and preservatives that our body's now got to try and deal with. Like, we never used to deal with those 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. If we look back to our parents and even the way I grew up, we grew produce in our backyard. You know, we had chooks, and this is in the suburbs, right? This is not, you know, out in the country. This is fresh produce that we had full control over. Whereas now we're just packages of food that we pull off the shelf because it's convenient, and it's detrimental to our health in a long-term fashion.
Okay. Gail, do you have a question?
No, actually, I think Dr. Mick's answered all of mine. Thank you.
Okay. So one thing I just wanted to back up there on what you said there, Mick, about the supermarkets and the checking out. What a different world it would be if, when you went to the checkout counter, instead of seeing all the chips and the chocolate bars, what if we saw the fresh fruit, the vegetables, the carrot sticks, like the carrot sticks might not be quite as healthy because now they've become processed at that point, but what a difference do you think that would make in our children's health, and even in our own health, and even just in our mental programming, that we need that healthy, nutritious snack, not something that is processed in order to make us want to devour the entire bag, right? Like Doritos or the Canadian cheesies, right? Like what a difference that would make.
It's made a huge difference, and it won't be something that you might notice straight away, right? Like, you don't sit down and have, you know, when you're sitting down, you've got, whether you meat eater or not, and let's say you've got vegetables on your plate, you don't eat those vegetables and feel fantastic 5 minutes later. But we know they're a really integral part of a nutritious diet. We know the benefits of the phytochemicals and the vitamins and minerals that are in that, let's say, fruit and vegetables that we consume. We know they're really good for us as well, but we don't feel them straight away. If we have deficiencies in them, we'll feel it. It might be 5, 10, 15 years down the track as well. So, you know, there's an old saying about shopping around the outside of the supermarket. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you, but I often use a scale. I use it with clients with a scale of 1 to 10. So when you pick up an item in the supermarket, you look at it. Now, you give it a rating out of 10. So a 1 is you have got no control over that product or what is in that product. So let's say if someone picks up I don't know, Canadian cheesies. They sound like you couldn't stop at like a couple, right? No. So you look at it and you go, okay, what control do I have over the production and ingredients in that product? You have zero, right? You didn't manufacture it, they've added things into it as well. If we move up to the other end of the scale, let's say fruit and vegetables, although you don't have full control over how it's growing, you can actually control that meal. You can make a meal with it and you can go, I choose to use these ingredients in a healthy meal. So you pick up a I don't know, mac and cheese or something in a box in a supermarket, you're pretty sure that's going to be about a 1 to 3, right? Because it's full of all the nasties I've mentioned before. Whereas if you've got a whole lot of vegetables are made, I don't know, vegetable lasagna or something like that, then you've got more control over it. So that would be at the other end. So you can rate your product as you pick it up and look at it and you go, Canadian cheesies, yeah, I'm going to give that about a 1, right? But why do they taste so good, right? Is because of those chemicals, and people can Google a thing called the bliss point, and it's about the chemicals that food scientists add into products that trick the brain into craving more of that product. So yes, you open a bag and you sit there and half an hour later you go, oh my God, I was only going to have a few, and you've absolutely smashed the bag, right? So again, it's that addictive thing, and it's not just sugars and salts and things. These are other chemicals that elicit, feel good and release some of these neurotransmitters in your brain. So you want to crave them more. That's how they become addicted to food, to those types of foods as well. So once you pick up a product, give it a rating, put it in your trolley, then when you finish shopping, while you're waiting in the checkout, have a look at your trolley as an overall picture and go, okay, I'm going to rate the whole trolley out of 10. So you might be up around a 7 or 8, feeling pretty good with yourself. And when you are feeling good with yourself, as you said, have a look around at someone else's trolley. And, you'll see what they're putting in their trolley. And my God, some of them, you would be really hard to find something nutritious, something that's going to replenish the body, something that's going to nourish the body, something that's going to reduce inflammation in the body and be synergistic with the human body. It's really hard to find those in people's trolleys as well.
Okay, Mick, I have to book a flight to Australia because
they're all coming to Canada.
You've just used the word trolley so many times that it's intrigued me that I need to see a trolley in action in a grocery store, because we don't call them trolleys here. So that was
carts,
shopping carts.
Yeah,
we're pretty basic here.
And the ones would have one crook wheel on them that never works quite well enough. Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, that's because they're not in balance. So that brings us full circle. What is the relevance of balancing the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in the body?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, because it's really a good indicator of the level of inflammation within the body. So omega-6s, we've talked a lot about omega-3s. The anti-inflammatory component is just one part of their benefit. But the omega-6 levels, omega-6 in excess can be highly inflammatory, and our body tries to maintain a fairly good ratio between omega-6 and omega-3. And that should be a 3-to-1 ratio or below is ideal. So, but again, if we go back to the testing, that's one of the key things that we test for, is that omega-6 to 3 balance. And Gail touched on it before. I was 18-year-old, I think. You said Gail was 40-to-1 instead of 3-to-1 or below. So we can correct that imbalance, and we do it 2 ways. We increase it with really good omega-3s, so we restore some of that balance with that. But also, if the consumption of omega-6s is quite high through their diet, we obviously want to reduce that consumption as well. And we can bring a person back to balance a lot quicker if we address both of those factors.
Okay. And just in closing, Mick, actually, I'm going to see if Gail or Rebecca have any other questions.
I actually just have a question. If you were going to advise somebody who is looking for omega-3s, and there's such an array of choices in the store of like what should they look for on a label that you would consider as a red flag, or what would you say is a go point for purchasing an omega-3?
I tell them to walk out of the store. And I know, in all seriousness, I would, because even products, and not just essential fatty acid, but even supplements, personal care products that say they're all natural and they're this and that, when you actually look at the label and reading labels, I pretty much got to do another Zoom on reading food labels, because, you know, if you can't pronounce it, then you probably shouldn't be consuming it. And so if we look at some of the more inferior products, and I've seen a lot of, let's say, fish oils, essential fatty acids out there, is where they're sourcing that essential fatty acid from. So we want to look at, you know, how much of the actual active constituent, the EPA and DHA, does it contain? Where do they source it? How do they manufacture it? Because we don't want to be putting in contaminants. Now, in Australia, I'm not going to mention brands, but there was a well-known commercial brand that used to sell a fish oil, and on the bottle it said tested for heavy metals. And people have on a big little on the label on the bottle. So people go, awesome. This is a pure source of omega-3s. Well, hang on a minute. They said they tested for them, didn't say anything about removing them. Now, they got sued because that was false advertising. So be really careful of the way things are promoted, how labels are put on things as well. You know, that's a super important one. So these, you know, to remove heavy metals from a fish oil is an expensive process. But what if you use, like Zinzina, what if you use a sustainable type of fish like sardines, anchovies and things that didn't have those heavy metals in the first place? That's a much better starting point. So again, the quality, one of my pet hates is inferior essential fatty acids as well, because people want to dose up, but what else are they putting in their body that's detrimental to their health? That's one of the main things.
So then we're looking at third-party testing, manufacturing standards, and people with health challenges to make sure that they are getting the recommended amount based on their weight. Supportive scientific research to prove the efficacy of the fish oil that they're taking. What about the final one, smell and taste?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know, if you think back to old essential fatty acids, like things like cod liver oil, I think I can still remember a bottle in the cupboard at home when I was a kid, and you could probably smell it without even opening the door. It was that rancid. So we got to look at how stable is the product as well, because essential fatty acids can oxidize. They can be affected by heat and light and those sorts of things. Like anything that's oil based, that includes olive oil. So you want to look at so I've lost my train of thought now. If we want to look at, maybe I'm traumatized by the smell of that, whatever was in that thing. So we want to make sure it's stable. And that's not just in transport, storage, you know, when you open a bottle, we want to also make sure it's stable so we can actually absorb it at a much higher level as well. So the polyphenols, those antioxidants, also act as a little bit of a preservative so the fish oil stays fresh, and that's really important as well. Taste is a big one because, again, compliance, particularly with kids, you know, I've never had anyone, so I will say that the Zinzino Balanced Oil does not taste like fish. There's no fishy aftertaste. People aren't going to be repeating and burping it up 3 hours later. They're all naturally flavored. They're more citrus-based flavors. So if someone can take it straight off the spoon as an oil and it actually tastes really good, compliance is going to be really, really high as well, whereas other fish oils don't match it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jordan. Is there anything you would like to say in closing?
Yeah, look, I really encourage people to get tested. Again, if we go back to the start of the chat today, we talked about, well, what if you don't know you're deficient? That's the key area here. What if, you know, we do go to doctors and get regular blood tests to look at numbers and find out whether, let's say it's iron levels. Well, we're doing a similar thing. We're doing from the comfort of our home. It's a simple finger prick test, and we're measuring 11 fatty acids, and where there's deficiency, we can correct it and we can prove in 4 months when we do a retest that the balance oil is doing what it says it's doing as well. So I'm very much from a preventative point of view, proactive point of view as far as health. Why wait to have a health concern before you actually, correct it as well? I mean, you just got to look at that. I don't know if you've ever seen that Super Size Me doco. You can see the effect. Now, obviously, it's intense with what he did to his body, but he's just basically shortened what a lot of people are doing to their bodies on a daily basis. And we can see within that 30 days what happens to his liver. If you haven't already seen it, it's a really interesting documentary. And even medical doctors, when they looked at his blood work, he had the liver of an alcoholic within, I think, 20 days of that 30 days. So let's stretch that out, right? Let's say you're not eating those types of junk food 3 meals a day, but you might have it one, or you might have it multiple times a week. Well, let's see what your liver's like in 5 years or something like that. But how do we know that? Well, we need to do a liver function test. This is, again, a very simple test that we can do at home and correct things before they become an issue.
Yeah, that's insane. And yes, I recommend everybody watch that again if you haven't watched it. It's definitely eye-opening. And that it's that alcoholic, what is it called? Non-fatty liver disease.
Yeah, non-fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Yeah, it's quite prevalent.
Yeah, and actually, I actually have quite a number of vegetarian friends that are non-alcoholics, never had a drink in their life, that have actually been diagnosed with that. And it's insane what we're actually putting into our bodies, and we think it's normal. And just in closing, we are on the cutting edge of a health revolution, and chronic diseases, especially those that are preventable through our lifestyle changes, are the epidemic of our generation. And people desperately need the guidance to find their way back to their health. And that is why you and I are here tonight, and we have Gail and Rebecca, and we have everybody that's out there in the Omega Revolution listening to us. And that is what our goal is to bring awareness and to teach and to educate people as to why we need these products.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, everybody, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see Dr. Jordan again on the first Thursday of May. So have a fabulous evening, everybody. Take care.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.